Today I am going to talk about CAR T cell therapy, which is a revolutionary treatment in oncology. It's a immunotherapy basically. So before going to talk about CAR T cell therapy, I would like to talk about immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is a defense mechanism in all human beings. Basically, they are meant for protecting the human beings from the infections. So immunotherapy is provided in our body by basically two cells, B cells and T cells. B cells produce antibodies and fight against infections and protect our bodies. T cells are a subset of cells which do additional functions along with providing a helping nature or helping hand to B cells in fighting against infections, and they have additional function of killing the infective causing bacteria or virus or fungal infections directly. And these cells also important fighting against the cancer cells. So T and B cells are very important part of our body which helps in protecting against infections and cancer cells. So now I am going to discuss about CAR T cells. So CAR T cells are basically manufactured in a laboratory. So in this process, the patient who have a cancer where they are facing a difficulty to get a cure, these are patients are selected for CAR T cell therapy. So from these patients, white cells, especially T cells, are extracted from the patient and they are taken to a laboratory where these cells are modified or bioengineered to activate the T cells. A lentivirus is used to transduce a gene into the T cells where this gene helps in activating the T cells, which in turn these T cells target and kill the cancer cells. So this is basically CAR T cells. So after manufacturing these cells in the laboratory, these cells are transported treating center where the patient is going to get treated. Once the product reaches the center, these cells are infused into the patient's body. So once these cells are transfused into the patient's body, these activated T cells attack the cancer cells specifically directed against the CD19 marked cancer cells that is exclusively seen in the lymphomas and acute leukemias, especially B cell ALL. So these cells, when they go and attack the cancer cells, automatically they get killed because of the chemicals released by these cells and the patient goes into remissions. So this is a revolutionary technique because these patients are very hard to treat and they have already subjected to different types of chemotherapies to get into remission. So these are very hard to treat patients where CAR T cell therapy is helping them into get into remissions. So in this way, this is going to help the patients into getting a long-term cure. So basically CAR T cell therapy is a curative modality of treatment. CAR T cell therapy is used for two types of cancers. One is lymphoma, the second one is leukemia. Within lymphomas, there are two varieties, high-grade lymphoma and low-grade lymphoma. Low-grade lymphoma, there are three subtypes, mantle cell lymphoma, marginal cell lymphoma and follicular lymphoma. So these patients basically are hard to treat, that is they are relapsed refractory lymphomas. It is difficult to get a remission from the traditional chemotherapy. Coming to the leukemia also, B cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia is an entity where it is seen specifically in children and adults, and when they are difficult to treat, that is relapsed refractory leukemias, these patients have a opportunity to get a cure with the CAR T cell therapy. So lymphomas and leukemias where they are very difficult to treat or refractory, this is the only treatment modality which is going to help the patients. So I am going to discuss how CAR T cell therapy is prepared. So patients who are selected, that is relapsed refractory lymphoma or relapsed refractory acute leukemia patients, are selected based on the background physical examination laboratory test. So these patients, once they are selected with a machine called leukapheresis machine, the patient's white blood cells which are rich in T cells are extracted from the patient's body and they are transported back to the center where the CAR T cell therapy is prepared. So in the laboratory, with the help of the lentivirus, they help the patient's T cells to modify into active T cells, and under vigorous conditions and quality check, these cells are prepared and multiplied until a sufficient number of T cells are developed in the laboratory. Once the required number of cells are prepared in the laboratory, they are quality check again, and the cell product is transported back to the hospital where the patient is admitted. So before transmitting CAR T cell therapy, meanwhile they are getting laboratorily modified in the manufacturing center. We will prepare the patient by giving a conditioning chemotherapy, and once the product comes back to the hospital, we transfuse the CAR T cell therapy or CAR T cells into the patient's body. So once we transfuse the cells into the body, they start attacking the cancer cells, and slowly patients go into remission. So for this process, that is from the collecting the T cells, that is white blood cells from the patient body and retransfusing into the patient's body, it takes approximately around 10 to 14 days. So once we transfuse the CAR T cells into the patient's body, we will be observing these patients in the hospital for approximately 2 weeks to 3 weeks. So once the patient is confirmed to be safe to be discharged, we will be discharging these patients from the hospital. So after transfusing the CAR T cells into the patient body, patients has to be followed for at least 3 months for the CAR T cell therapy related complications. So presently there are 6 FDA approved CAR T cell therapies around the world. 6 approved therapies are used worldwide for, as we discussed, like lymphomas, leukemias, and multiple myeloma. So these are the 3 indications worldwide they are used. In India recently, there is a company, Immunotherapy, has prepared a NextCAR 19. These CAR T cell therapy has been under research since last 2 to 3 years, and it has passed through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and it is recently approved by Government of India, and our center is one of the approved center to treat these patients with NextCAR 19. So this is the drug or treatment which is relatively cheaper in comparison to the treatments which are used in Europe and Americas. Almost the cost is 1/10 of the cost which is used in the Western countries. So the cost which is in the Western countries, the CAR T cell therapy cost is ranging somewhere from the $1 lakh to $4 lakh, and in India the cost is reduced by almost 1/10, and the present cost of the treatment which is produced by Indian company is somewhere approximately around 40 lakhs. So when we treat the patients with the CAR T cells, inevitably they are going to face certain amount of complications. These are caused by the cytokines which are released by the CAR T cells. It is called as cytokine release syndrome. So these are basically chemicals released by the activated T cells. When the T cells are transferred into the body, these chemicals are released, and these cells cause the leakage of the blood vessels, which can cause the accumulation of fluid outside the blood vessels into the soft tissues, and these chemicals can also cause complications related to the brain in form of hallucinations, confusion, memory loss. Sometimes in the worst case scenario they can have a fits, that is seizures also. So the same chemicals can cause cardiac complications like cardiac arrhythmias, cardiac failure, and similarly it can affect the kidneys and cause renal insufficiency, like it is renal failure. So these are the expected complications from the CAR T cell therapy. So when the patient is under hospitalized or doctor control or doctor supervision, these patients are safely treated, and 90-95% of the patients are safely treated and discharged. So there is nothing to worry about these side effects, because whenever the patients come across these treatments, they tend to read the side effects and they get really scared of the side effects. So in an experienced center by an experienced doctor, these complications can be treated and patient can be saved from all these side effects. And fortunately, the product which is manufactured in India has got more safety profile than the drugs or the CAR cells which are approved in the Western countries. So in a center which is well equipped with a good training facilities of the staff and with a qualified doctor, all these complications can be managed safely and discharge the patient safely.